What is the best diet for fat loss or weight loss in general? How about exercise? What is the best exercise to help you lose or maintain weight? And strength training, resistance training. Is there a way of training that is better than another way of training as far as building quality lean muscle? We're going to be looking at these questions today, and we're going to be talking about fads and trends in the fitness industry. I've been in the industry for a while, and being 62 years old, I have seen things come and go over the years. Books about running being the best way to exercise, books about restricting carbohydrates, keto, fasting, many different trends hit the fitness industry. But some of them aren't really trends, and some of them have a place, and we're going to unpack that today. Same with training, with resistance training and with cardio. We see things come and go. We see things like Orange Theory become very popular, hot yoga, maybe it's kettlebell training, or it's high rep and low resistance training, or it's to progressively overload the muscles, periodization. The list is endless. So let's look at what's best, what's not, what we can throw out, and what we can keep. So first of all, a fad diet, in my opinion, is something that in the long term would be completely unsustainable and even unhealthy. Maybe it's cutting out entire food groups and macronutrient groups like carbohydrates or fats. Perhaps it is periods of calorie restriction that go on for an extended amount of time. Now, some things that we do can be beneficial in the short term and therapeutic and get us over a hump, and then we should have a long-term plan on the other side of this for sustainability. Often when I'm working with clients, I will focus on that calorie restriction in the beginning. I try to get them some wins because I think that's important. It can be psychologically difficult if things are moving too slow. Yes, we do want weight loss that is sustainable. We don't want it to go too fast. We don't want to lose our muscle. I agree with all of that. But sometimes in the beginning, we just need to feel better. We need to bring down some inflammation. We need to have some wins on the scale. And so in the short term, some restrictions that would seem overly restrictive can be of benefit in the short term. But once again, there is an expiration date to different types of diets. So let's dive into some of the things that have come and gone over the years, and they've come and gone maybe more than once. We often see something come in, make a huge bang. Maybe there's some books written about it, best-selling books. It's all the thing. It's the trend. Every movie star's doing it, and then it's gone, and something else is in its place. And then maybe 10 years go by, and it's back, or 20 years, 30 years even. So I want to start out with the South Beach diet. This is one I haven't heard people talk about in quite a while. So this came out in 2003 when there was a book released called The South Beach Diet, the delicious doctor-designed foolproof plan for fast and healthy weight loss. We got to have that word fast in there. That always seems to attract people. And right away, that kind of screams fad at a person. But once again, there is a place for upping the ante, so to speak. There is a place for accelerating a bit to get those wins, and even for health, and we're going to talk about that. So this diet suggests that carbohydrates max out at 28%, which isn't too extreme because I often set clients at, say, 30% of their calories coming from carbohydrates. And so it's not something that I personally consider extreme. Now, if you're an athlete, you're younger, yes, things might be different. I'm speaking primarily to women who are over the age of 40 and they're in that perimenopausal to menopausal window. The hormones are starting to shift, and that's when we might need to readjust things a bit and look at things differently. So there are 3 phases to this diet. 2 are weight loss and 1 is for weight maintenance. So phase 1 is for 2 weeks. You eat 3 meals, 2 snacks featuring lean protein, high fiber vegetables, low-fat dairy, unsaturated fats. You limit carbs and fruit and abstain from juice and alcohol. So some of these things on the surface are fine. Others might be troublesome if you were going ultra low fat for a long period of time. Our brain needs fats, dietary healthy fats. And phase two, this is the long-term maintenance phase, or excuse me, not the maintenance phase, but the weight loss phase. Followers stay until they reach their goal weight. During this time, dieters are instructed to follow the same basic guidelines as the first phase. There are limited portions of fruit, limited portions of grains, whole grains, and a little bit of some types of alcohol is allowed in moderation. So now we saw a little bit more extreme, moving to more moderate. And then phase three, once the users hit their goal weight, now we're in the maintenance phase, and that allows for all foods in moderation, using the basic principles that were recommended in the earlier stages. The carbohydrates are often the villain, and we see this in a lot of diets. And there's a little bit of that going on here, although, like I said, I don't think 28% is too crazy of a number. But in reality, really, carbohydrates are the main source of energy for our body, and they can be important when we're building muscle. What I generally see is people are eating the wrong types and the wrong amounts. So they're eating a lot of ultra-processed carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates that are low in fiber, have very little nutrient value, might even raise your cravings in the long run, because some of this can make cravings worse. Really no, as I said, no micronutrient value for your body, and it's a poor source of energy. So the type of carbs does matter. A carbohydrate is not a carbohydrate. In my opinion, a calorie is not a calorie. There are differences in how we consume them. Secondly, the amount, sometimes they can be overdone, especially if somebody is not that active. We can't make the same recommendations surrounding carbohydrates for every single individual. So for example, when we get closer to menopause, many women start to have some problems if they are consuming too many carbohydrates and too many of the wrong type of carbohydrates. But if this woman is staying active, she's lifting, she's challenging her body, she's moving, she's walking, she's doing her zone 2 cardio, then having a moderate amount of carbohydrates is really going to help her energy level. So it does help improve mood, sleep, appetite, and it provides what we need for our immune system if it's the right type. Also for our gut, we want diversity within the gut. So there is a place for carbohydrates. Now, as I said, I don't believe this diet is too extreme. The only thing I would be concerned about is, again, not going crazy with low fat for a long period of time. But having a lower fat diet can be beneficial. When I used to get ready for bikini bodybuilding shows, we did bring our fats down. I'm going to tell you, I would not have leaned out the same way had I kept a higher fat count in my diet. Now, when I came off of a competition and I began to reverse diet and back out of this, I would introduce more diverse foods. I would introduce more carbohydrates and more fats. Again, the type of fats matter, just like the type of carbohydrates matter. And what I see is women tend to overdo the fats. And often when they come to me, they're very surprised. They think that they're eating too many carbohydrates. They think the carbohydrates are the problem. So we start tracking in something such as Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, a couple of apps that I use, and we find out that she's eating a low carb diet, but she's consuming not enough protein and way too many fats and the wrong type of fats. And really, the woman is not going to get the type of results with that type of macronutrient ratio. Now, one thing that I do notice, and I don't want to forget to talk about this, so I'm going to inject it right here into the podcast, is that many things aren't necessarily a fad and they're not necessarily a trend, but people hop on the train and write it out and overdo one thing. You see this, you don't just see it in diet and exercise, you see it in everything. Politics, philosophies, you see it everywhere. It's almost like people overcompensate. So I believe it was through the 90s that we had the low fat craze, and then we wound up with diabetes absolutely exploding because people were consuming more refined, ultra processed, sugary types of carbohydrates in place of the fats. So we wound up with a problem. Well, now we corrected it, but in my opinion, it's an overcorrection. You have people pushing fats and even saturated fats incredibly hard on social media and really with the different programs and books that are coming out. In my opinion, it's overdone. It's too much of an emphasis on the fats. You can't look for the one thing. You can't look for the one answer. That never ever works. You see it with people who overfast. Now, I am a proponent of intermittent fasting, but I'm going to be completely honest. I vary how I intermittent fast. And sometimes, some days, I don't intermittent fast. And so I go in and out of it based on where I'm at, how I feel, my health, my goals. It is something that I use as a tool. And it is a lifestyle. It is part of my lifestyle, but it is not part of my lifestyle every single day of the year. The women that I have seen on social media who are saying that intermittent fasting or fasting in general absolutely ruined their metabolism, typically they were making some pretty big mistakes. They were over exercising, doing a lot of cardio, doing an excessive amount of HIIT. They were under eating. They weren't consuming enough protein. They weren't getting their macro or their micronutrients. So you often see women who have an eating disorder hiding behind that eating disorder by using, or not hiding behind the eating disorder, but hiding behind fasting to hide the eating disorder. You see this quite a bit. Keep an eye on it. So when you hear that fasting ruined somebody or you had a bad experience, just back up. There, it may not have been the right time in your life to implement it. It may not have been implemented in the correct fashion. You might have been malnourished. You might not have had enough protein, and you might have overexercised. So I wanted to inject that in there before we go any further, because many things aren't necessarily fads or trends. Fat's not a trend, and really fasting's been around forever. And it's been done for spiritual reasons. It's been done way back by our ancestors. So no, it's not a fad. What becomes a fad is people taking something and almost making it a dogma and not even being willing to read the research or listen to any other perspectives on the issue. Next up, I want to take a look at the Atkins diet. This is one that many of us are familiar with. And this poor man, he passed away. And what happened is his work really got demonized because he passed away. So it was almost like, I forget the guy's name that did all the running craze. I had the book in the 70s. I got it as a Christmas present. I believe it was in 1978 or 1979. I don't recall. I was in high school. I got on the running kick, and then he passed away. Everybody blamed the running on it and vilified the running, and his work was almost demonized because of a result of it. Once again, taking something and building it up huge and not putting it in the proper perspective. So let's unpack the Atkins diet. So Atkins made waves in the late 1990s and early 2000s as what's considered the original low-carb diet, but I'm sure there were others before. It was developed in the 1970s by a cardiologist, Robert Atkins, MD. And hold on, my notes just kind of disappeared on me. The diet gives recommendations to the number of carbs to eat based on your weight loss goals. So Atkins may help you lose weight, but it's hard to stick to it for a long haul. That is the key right there. Is it sustainable? It also eliminates many of the healthy plant-based foods, so you might not get all of the vitamins, micronutrients, minerals, and fiber that you need. So there's many foods such as the fruits, the vegetables, the beans, the legumes that can give us healthy amounts of fiber and gut diversity and the micronutrients that we need. So as a result, this got labeled a fad diet. Well, this is the deal. It was really, in my understanding of what I've read, meant to be used for patients who needed to go through surgery, cardiology type surgery, and they really needed to bring their weight down rather quickly to be ready for that surgery, to get through it in a healthy manner and survive it, quite frankly. And so this diet was used therapeutically. So I still think there is a way to use the diet therapeutically. Now, many times, if somebody is insulin resistant, so I've talked a lot about insulin on this podcast. If you're new to my podcast, I'll give you just a brief runner up on this. When you eat, insulin comes in, and any type of sugar or glucose, as it's called, from that meal, insulin is responsible for shuttling that into the cells and into the muscles where it can be used for energy. A problem occurs when insulin is being released too often and blood glucose spikes are too often. So the blood sugar is going up and down too often throughout the day. Insulin is pouring in. What can happen is somebody becomes resistant to it. So their body fails to recognize insulin. The receptors fail to recognize that insulin is there. So you wind up with high blood glucose, you wind up with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And if there is a genetic predisposition for any of this, then it's even going to be even worse. Women in midlife tend to become insulin resistant as their hormones begin to shift, and that is a separate podcast all in itself. Just know that insulin can be a problem as we go through perimenopause and particularly menopause. So if an individual comes to me and they need to get this blood sugar under control, oftentimes I am going to not eliminate carbohydrates, but I'm going to bring them down to a lower level. Now, I always have a plan that if they are successful with this lower level, they're able to adhere to it, and that's big because sometimes they're not. Then we have a maintenance plan on the other side. We're not going to stay there indefinitely. Same with the fasting. We're going to vary that fasting window. We're going to vary the carbohydrates in that fasting window, and we're not going to stay low carb forever or keto forever. So it's just something to consider, that things can be used to get some wins, to stabilize blood glucose levels, and to control type 2 diabetes, and to bring down, again, once again, those insulin levels and those fasting insulin levels. But we don't stay there forever because there are benefits to having carbohydrates. The paleo diet is another one you may have heard of. That's become very popular over the past few years. It promotes eating like our ancestors, or at least how we thought our ancestors ate. Who knows how they truly ate? This diet emphasizes whole foods like grass-fed eggs and meat, fish, seafood, fruit, non-starchy vegetables. Non-starchy, that's key. So less likely to increase blood glucose levels. Nuts, seeds, and oils, so the healthy fats. Processed foods and sugary drinks and sugary treats and dairy and grains are off the table. So this does eliminate grains. Now, once again, there can be a therapeutic level with this. If you are in an autoimmune flare-up, your autoimmune is out of control. Sometimes, and I say sometimes because this is not the case with every individual, it could be beneficial to temporarily eliminate the grains to bring inflammation under control, or to limit them in a moderate plan. So I do have autoimmune disease. I have RA, rheumatoid arthritis. That is different from regular arthritis. I have to say that because it drives me absolutely bonkers when I say I have rheumatoid and somebody says I have that too, and they point to their elbow or whatever. Rheumatoid arthritis is a systematic disease. It is where the joints are being attacked by these antibodies. Typically, you will have the rheumatoid factor. You will have elevated levels of inflammation within your lab work. There is no cure for it, but you can bring it into remission. Medication is debatable. Some people are able to bring it into remission without medication. Some people really need the help of the medication. I'll be straight up. I do use medication for this. I've not had really good luck with just controlling it with diet, even though I am very careful. So I have grains in my diet, but I limit them. I'm not eating bowls and bowls of grains throughout the day. I'm eating small amounts of them. And if I start to feel flared up, I might temporarily take them out of the diet. So I think this is a bit more sustainable. But once again, taking those grains out, you're taking out vitamin B, a lot of fiber in those grains. Um, dairy, dairy is one of those things that's on the table. Some people can tolerate it, some people can't. I have found, because I've leaned out for bodybuilding shows 16 times, and I've done photo shoots and gone through that same kind of bodybuilding process where you bring the body fat down so that you can see the muscle and the definition. So I've done it for photo shoots, I've done it for shows. I will tell you this, if I'm serious about it, I'm not eating dairy. It will not work for me with dairy. I will hold on to a little bit of inflammation and bloat. And I might even bring my weight down, but I won't be able to see my abs and I won't be able to see definition. So if I'm serious about a lean down phase, I take it out. Now, right now, I'm following more of a Mediterranean plan and I do a very small amount of goat and sheep. I am not sensitive to those cheeses. I tend to react more to things like mozzarella, brie, some of those type of cheeses. So dairy up for debate. And then, of course, the way dairy is manufactured or processed here in the United States, not always the best option. So just something to consider. So the paleo, a little bit more sustainable. This one really bothers me. This one comes and goes and comes and goes. And I see people do it with their pets. Absolutely drives me crazy. Raw food diet. So let me explain this one. It's been around since the 1800s, and this diet seems to resurface every few years or so. It's based on eating foods in their raw state, which means that nothing can be cooked above 118 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is how it works. People believe that an ingredient's natural enzymes are destroyed when we heat it up to a certain level. And so the raw food dieters juice raw produce as well as dehydrate, ferment, and sprout fruits and vegetables. Some versions are vegan, so they don't eat any animal products. Others might include a few eggs and dairy. This one concerns me because of food safety. If foods aren't cooked at a certain level, you could wind up having things like E. coli, salmonella, other types of issues. You could have parasites. This concerns me from a food safety level. And it's also restricted because it's not high enough in protein, particularly if you're doing the vegan version and you're just everything's coming from these fruits and veggies. You're simply not getting enough of what you need. You might be getting some micronutrients, but you're not getting the macro. Maybe some of the fibers being taken out in the process. So I'm definitely not a fan of this one, but I've seen it come and go, and I've seen people put themselves and their pets on the plan. I'm not sure about the effect on pets. I don't know enough about that. My pets are not on this. Their food is not raw. I will tell you that much. So this one I would consider most definitely a fad. And now, can some foods be more nutritious in their raw state? Yes, but this is the deal. And with vegetables, I see this. There are many women that absolutely cannot tolerate certain types of vegetables raw. I'm one of these people. Most of my vegetables need to be steamed and cooked. So if I'm having kale, I'm having spinach, it needs to be cooked. I don't do well with the raw. I can eat a small amount raw. I can't eat a lot. And same with, really any vegetable other than, say, lettuce. I do okay with lettuce, but I have a client who even lettuce will flare her up. So you have to consider that bioindividuality as well. Now, another one, and this one I was really not that familiar with, it's the macrobiotic diet. So let's dive into it. It's been around since the 1920s. It's mostly plant-based and focuses on restoring balance with plants by using plants. So it restores balance within the body, calm within the body. You eat different things based on your gender, your age, your location, and your health issues. So right away, that sounds complicated to me. It's so many factors. And yeah, I would say gender, but existing health issues, yes, you need to consider that. Age, yes. Location, I don't not so sure about that. So to go macrobiotic, you load up on whole grains, legumes, and veggies. Fish, dairy, eggs, poultry, and red meat are only eaten occasionally and in small amounts. You're told to steer clear of any potatoes, any peppers, any tropical fruits such as oranges, and you stay clear of tomatoes, no caffeine, no alcohol, no added sugars, no processed foods. Um, Now, initially, parts of this can seem healthy. The no processed foods can seem healthy, yes, but it's not sustainable, and you're not getting enough animal protein in my viewpoint, and just not enough protein in general. So once again, not something that I would recommend. Keto. Now, this has been around a very long time, and this is my opinion on keto before I talk about it a bit more. I once again consider it therapeutic. There is a place in certain situations with certain individuals for a certain time period where keto is the best approach. Most people that I know they're not able to stay on this indefinitely. So let's talk about it. The keto diet severely restricts carbohydrates. True keto. Now, there are modified versions. I have done modified versions of keto, but it's not really the true keto. So it restricts you to about 5% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, 25 grams a day. So maybe like a little more than a half cup of rice or quinoa or beans. That's not a whole lot. And you wouldn't have any fruits. You'd be restricting your vegetables as well. It is extremely high fat. Dieters are told to consume high amounts of fat and only moderate to low levels of protein. I've seen protein levels at about 25% of your calories, in my opinion, too low. It's not high enough. You need more to, especially as a perimenopausal, menopausal woman who wants to hold on to that precious muscle, you're going to need to increase that protein. And we need more as we age and not less. So not the best diet if you are a woman, say in your 60s, you've gone through menopause, maybe not the best for you. But it could be good for helping with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and it could definitely help to stabilize insulin and those blood sugar levels. So there's a place in the short term. It was originally used to control epilepsy and the seizures that would occur. Now we have, more medications, but back in the day, they were using diet in a therapeutic way, and they were using keto. Now, keto is based on the whole idea of going into ketosis. I won't go into the science of that, but basically allowing your body to reach for fat for fuel and not just sugary carbs for fuel. So training your body, forcing your body to have to use fat as a fuel source. Most Americans are what is called by J.J. Virgin sugar burners, meaning they're just running on carbohydrates, running on sugar, running on glucose, and their bodies are not adapted to reach for fat as a source. You really want to be able to reach back and forth between the two, and that is the definition of metabolic health and flexibility. The majority of Americans are not there. I've heard numbers as high as 96% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy or inflexible. I talked a little bit about the fasting, so I'm not going to dive into that. Intermittent fasting has many, many forms. Fasting in general has many, many forms. There's something called the 5-2 diet. I will very briefly describe that. It involves eating normal for 5 days per week and fasting the other 2. But the fasting days, you can have up to 600 calories. So it can be a version of fasting. Once again, short term. Short term. I wouldn't tell a woman in perimenopause or menopause to do this continually. I would use this in a very short term way because there is the potential for her to not get enough protein in that week that she's doing this 5-2. I would not tell somebody to do this week after week after week after week. Maybe it's something pulled out every once in a while. So, there's pros and cons to it. So once again, this is about sustainability. It's about health. You need to have enough macro and micronutrients for your brain, for your muscles, for all of the organs in your body to function properly. Your diet needs to be sustainable. So as women, we need to stop hopping on the bandwagon and riding one bus down to the station. We need to look at other avenues to get down to the station. So, it's just something that I really want you to consider. Now, let's talk about other little trends that come and go. I want to actually touch on supplements very briefly. So, a big supplement right now is the electrolyte supplement. One of my favorite products is LMNT. That's is spelled L, M as in mother, N as in nanny, T, LMNT, LMNT. And I do use LMNT. But here we go again. I am hearing women encouraged to use it all the time, every single day. And I don't feel that that is necessary. In my case, if I were to do that, I would start retaining water and get bloated, and it just would be too much for my body. So this is how I use electrolytes. So first of all, I only use the clean ones. I only use LMNT. They're very, very clean product. I do not use things like Gatorade, things that are filled with junk. So it is very hot and dry here in the summer. It's not like that in the winter here in Albuquerque. It actually gets quite cold, but it is always dry for the most part, except in the monsoon season. But in the summer, we get very hot weather, and then we enter the monsoons. We might be sweating more. If we're exercising, if we're outdoors at all, we're going to be losing electrolytes. And so, yes, I'm a small woman, I'll use half a packet on those days throughout the summer. My husband will use a full packet or more. He works outside, and he's in sometimes hot attics, and a hot attic is that, it's like doing hot yoga times 10. So yeah, he's consuming electrolytes. His body really needs them. If somebody is on a ketogenic diet, they're on a Atkins low carb type diet, then it could be very beneficial because when we are losing carbohydrates, we're losing water, we're getting dehydrated, we're losing some electrolytes. Again, I would experiment with the amount that might work for you. The more active you are, the hotter the climate, the drier the climate, the lower the carbohydrates, the more electrolyte replacement you will need. There is a benefit to it. Fasting, you need your electrolytes. But let's say you have a higher carbohydrate or a moderate carbohydrate day, and you are not, maybe you just do one lifting session of an hour or 45 minutes, a zone 2 walk outside. Maybe it's winter and it's cold or it's cool. I personally don't feel the need to do the electrolytes under those circumstances. I just don't feel my body needs that. And I've tried it before and have felt bloated if I do a packet of that. So is it a fad? Is it a trend? No, it has purpose. When it becomes a fad is when it's overdone or something is introduced as the be-all catch-all, and you do see this with supplements. Creatine is very big right now, and it has benefits for brain health, it has benefits for recovery, and benefits for building muscle. The brain health in particular, the cognition really interests me. I have used that product for about 10 years. I don't use it all the time, but I have used it at various times. Lately, I got some bloating with it, and so I backed off from it. And I feel that it is something that, and I feel this about all supplements, it's beneficial if you are a healthy individual, but if you have certain medical conditions, maybe it's not the best thing for you. So it can be really helpful to have a practitioner that knows something about this and can walk you through and say, yeah, creatine would be beneficial for you, or creatine, no, I don't think that that is the right avenue for you. When I am working with clients who have any type of kidney, liver, they've had cancer, I am very cautious with supplement suggestions because it might not be appropriate for their condition. Certain types of cancers behave differently in the body. So even protein intake, I need to be careful with that because certain types of cancers, they actually might need to lower their protein. So this is where not being not looking for that one answer and that one thing and making a blanket statement that this is good for everybody. This is where we have to take this with a grain of salt. Now, fats, I want to go back to this and the high fat trend. This is the problem that I see. Not everybody metabolizes fat well. Some people, there are certain gene mutations where people should not be on a high fat diet. And unless a coach is testing their clients, how would they know this? So again, I find a moderate approach better. I don't think that a high fat diet is a good option. I really don't. And I don't think having high saturated fats is a good option. Now, the source of the fats matter, and there are some saturated fats that are healthy. They have health benefits, but you eat them in moderation. I don't think eating a ribeye every day of the week is a good idea. And the carnivore, that's another one of those things where it's just meat, 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 meat. I'm not a fan. Might it have a purpose with autoimmune? Yes, I've seen that happen. I've heard of that happening. But once again, therapeutic and also taking into account bio-individuality. A coach could actually hurt somebody by pushing them into a higher fat scenario. It just tends to get overdone. I see fiber as being extremely important because if you are having the higher fat foods, fiber can really help to negate some of that. It can help to negate some of the starchier carbs and bring that impact down. That's called that net carbohydrate impact, where you're looking at the carbs minus the fiber in the diet. Fiber is extremely important for cancer prevention. Not that there's any way to actually prevent cancer, but there's a way to lower your risk. I should change that wording to be lower the risk, not prevent. Lower the risk. Lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. High fiber is something that I can say is beneficial. Now, the amount, I have found that I generally will say to women, try to get to that 30 grams if you can, but I've heard numbers as high as 50. The problem is not everybody can tolerate that, and they have major digestive issues. So we have to approach it with that bio-individual approach. I'm going to bounce over to exercise very briefly. HIIT got to be all the rage. It seemed like over the past 10 years that really took off. Now you're seeing that back out a little bit because it was overdone. Once again, is there a benefit to a small amount of HIIT? Absolutely. It is, you do get a benefit of having a higher metabolism throughout the day and then also retaining your muscle. But there is a tipping point with it where it's too much, and there's some people it's not appropriate for. So for me, I was doing a small amount of HIIT. I'm not doing it right now. I have had back issues since 2016. I'm actually going to do a separate podcast on spine health, so I'm not going to go into it here. But needless to say, doing HIIT, and I've tried it on cycling. I've tried it on the treadmill. I've tried it on the stair stepper. It hurts my back. It just increases the impact and the strain, the overall strain. It's not even the force, it's just the strain on my discs. I have degenerative discs. So I really have a problem there. This isn't just tight muscles. This is a problem with the discs. And it's been getting worse by the year. So I'm not doing HIIT right now. And then I have clients where they are going through that menopausal window and they're still in perimenopause and they're up and they're down. And they're not even doing well with intermittent fasting right now. They've had to back off that and eat more frequently. So there's a time to eat more frequently in smaller meals, and there's a time to fast and space those meals out. So a true coach, a true nutrition coach, fitness coach, health coach is going to take all of this into account. They're going to look at the research, they're going to look at the facts, they're going to look at your bioindividuality, and they're also going to encourage you to seek medical advice from a doctor, and they are going to be willing to work with your practitioner, your functional medicine doctor, integrative doctor. They're going to be willing to do these things. So be careful of these trends. Now, exercise with weights, resistance training. There are so many methods. There are drop sets. That's where you start with your heaviest weight, and then you go to a medium resistance, and then you go to the light. Now, the way you do it is it's all one set. So let's say you're doing shoulder presses. So you would do 10 at your heaviest. You'd immediately put the heavy down, pick up the medium weight, and do 10 more without stopping. You're not stopping. And then when you complete that 10, you put the medium resistance down, pick up your light resistance weight, and bang out 10 more. And so basically you've done 30 reps in one set, but you've changed the weight throughout. Another method is supersets. I'm real fond of this, especially if you're short on time. These can be great for you. So you combine two exercises. They could be opposing muscle groups, or they could be the same muscle groups. They could be biceps, triceps, or it could be two exercises for your triceps or two exercises for your biceps. You do the one exercise, and then without stopping, that's the thing, you're not resting, you go right over and do the other one. I'm fond of doing this with legs in particular. I find it beneficial to get that volume in. There's volume training. That's going to be lower resistance and higher reps. That can be beneficial if you have an injury and you simply cannot do heavy weight. I cannot do heavy weight on my lower body anymore. I can't even do the leg press anymore. It is, I went into some more issues the last few months. It started last summer, gradually got worse. I've had an MRI. Once again, I'll go into this in a separate episode, but I have some real problems in my back, real problems. And it's dangerous for me to overload my spine. And you know what? I get so irritated with this and don't get me wrong, it is very encouraging to see a woman in her 70s deadlifting, squatting, doing this heavier weight. And people love that, or doing burpees. But guess what? If she got a bad card, a bad luck of the draw, because many times these joint issues have a genetic component, and somebody just gets a bad set of genes, and they're going to have these joint problems, and they haven't done anything wrong, but they're going to have these joint problems. That's me with my back. Since 2016, I've done every single thing I can to spare my back and train smart, and I'm still in this position. Well, it pains me to see somebody look at that 74-year-old woman and say that that should be their goal, or it should be a goal for everyone. Now, back in the day, that was my goal, to be able to still lift very heavy. And I do well with upper body. I can still do quite a bit of weight on upper body. Just like I said, I can't do it on the lower body other than calves. Or if I'm doing a seated machine, like an extension, I can go heavy. A seated hamstring curl, not the prone, but the seated, I can go heavy. But if it's free weight, a barbell, no way, can't have it on my shoulders, can't deadlift. That forward motion brings my disc forward. It's a real problem. So once again, these blanket things, yes, it's inspiring. And yes, you might be one of the ones that is able to do that. But don't beat yourself up if you're not, because I went through this stage of looking at women my age and older doing these things and feeling like a loser. Like, what's wrong with you, Carol? You're doing a goblet squat. I can't talk today. Holding a dumbbell or a kettlebell, and it's not near that weight, and it's certainly not on your resting on your shoulders or your spine. And I felt a sense of having failed. But what I have to look at is there are things beyond my control. There are things that part of it's age, but a good part of it is genetics with the discs. My mom had issues and my dad had issues, and they had profound issues. So, and I did some things in my youth that weren't the smartest things that caught up with me later. So I had this problem, didn't know I had this problem, was lifting very, very heavy, working with a trainer lifting heavy, and boom, the bottom fell out, and that was that. And I haven't been to that point since. So I want you to look at things a little bit differently and to start to go, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that maybe that might be okay for me, but maybe it's not. And that's okay if it's not. There's other things you can do. There's other exercises. So back to the low weight, high resistance. That might have a place. We talked about supersets. Trisets, same thing as a superset, but it's 3 exercises combined, but you don't stop between each one. You only rest after that. Circuit training, you string together a group of exercises. Typically, it's going to be full body, typically. And there can be a benefit to that. It's my sneaky way of really getting women to get into their zone 2 and get that heart rate up. But I have heard people on podcasts, people that I respect, say that should never be done. You should only do straight sets. Well, this is the deal. If they're not going heavy and they're not going to progressive overload and they never get to failure, they're really not getting the benefit of that straight set. So let's say they go to the gym and they do 4 sets of squats, barbell squats, and they rest, I don't know, a minute or 90 seconds between each set. If they're light and they're just, say, I don't know, banging it out with a 30-pound bar and, going, and they're not even getting to failure or close to it, there's not going to be any benefit to that. And so a lot of times especially for mature women that might have some injuries and limitations, or they're not moving enough throughout the day, this could be a good option for them, or they don't have a lot of time, or the other type of training bores them. Resting 60 seconds and staying with, on one machine or one barbell or one set of dumbbells, it bores them. They want to move on. It can be beneficial. So this is the deal. All of these methods can work. It depends on your individual circumstances. It depends on your fitness level. It depends on how heavy you can lift. It depends on whether you're at the gym or using home equipment, because home equipment can be more difficult to go to progressive overload. It depends on your time. And then also think about, your goal is to stimulate the muscle for muscle growth. And there's more than one way to do this. So if somebody's telling you there's only one way, really question that. So I think I really covered everything that I wanted to cover today. It went a little longer. We're coming up on 50 minutes, so I'm going to close it off there. Do check out the show notes. There is a link to learn more about my Fit and Fierce program. I have just basically rewritten this program. I do this every once in a while. I revamp things because research changes, I change, I see needs in my clients. I have made the program, it used to be 12 weeks, it's now 16. I thought about a 6-month program and I got a lot of feedback saying, you know what, that's difficult for me to commit to 6 months. So I decided the 4 months was better after polling a few women in my audience. And each week, we focus on a different thing. So there's two aspects to the program. The first part of the program, the aspect to the program, is going to be your actual nutrition protocol and your training plan. And this is individualized, it's personalized, it's customized. No two women are doing the same thing. And that is really the bread and butter of the program. There are regular check-ins, there are coaching calls with me where you can get unstuck, you can get the support you need. The check-ins give the accountability. Trust me, if you're checking in, you're going to be accountable. You're not going to want to take those pictures and give those stats of waistline measurements if you haven't been on point. And so it does hold you accountable. But then there's an educational part of the program where you go through a self-paced module program, and every week has a different module. So there are modules on sleep, there's modules on resistance training, there's modules on stress, trauma, macronutrients. I go into each macronutrient. I talk about micronutrients. So you're going to come out of this program not only with results, with fat loss, if that's your goal, and for most women I work with, that is a goal. Muscle gain, that is a goal for everybody coming into the program. In fact, I would say if you don't want to increase your muscle, don't even bother to apply it, because it's that important. You're going to learn about nutrition. You're going to learn about what works for your body. You are really going to know how to help yourself and maybe even other people in your life that might need help. So there is a link in the show notes. It's also up on my website, carolcovino.com. You just hit the menu and go down to Fit and Fierce, and you can learn more. I do require a call because I want to make sure that I can get you results. I want to make sure we are a good fit. Not just energetically, and believe me, that's important, but also with our philosophies, our approach, and then is your individual circumstances something I can help you with? Because sometimes it's something where medical help is needed or a different type of coach is needed. And so this is what we discuss on the call. It is not a sales call. I can't stand when people do that to me. I really don't want to be bombarded. To me, it's you should feel like you can gather the information, see if it's a good fit, and then decide if it's for you. So there is absolutely no pressure. It's really just an exploration of whether or not this is good for you. I do ask that you read through the page all the way through. I give the investment of the program, so that's important because I get people sign up for the call and then they haven't even looked at the investment and they're asking me, okay, what does it cost? Well, that is right on the page. There are no secrets here. I'm very transparent. So check that out. And then also I will be opening up IF45 soon, the intermittent fasting program. And I will be running the program once again with Dr. Tara Gunther. More details on that. In fact, by the time I run, well, no, actually, no, it won't be up and going. Take that back, but it's coming soon. So the doors will open, I believe it's April that we decided on, because we want this to be your runway into summer. It's the runway program into summer. Okay, so that is it for now. If you want to contact me, the best way is to go to my the really best way to go is through Instagram, because I see those messages right away at Carol Covino Fitness. Shoot me a message. Let me know what you think. You can also visit my YouTube channel if you want to watch this. Thank you so much for joining me today. And wherever you are in the world, I wish you every blessing. Take care and bye for now.